we feel like we have a distinct purpose, which is to advance the homebrewing hobby and help people make better beer at home and be part of that community.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beer Rep Chats With. Today I'm joined by James Stiff from the Malt Miller. James, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Really pleased to be here and talk about all things homebrew.
Yeah, I mean, great. I'm a home brewer myself, so it'd be interesting to get some inside information on certain recipes and everything. And so let's start from the beginning with your background and how it's been since joining the Malt Miller.
Yeah, so officially I've been at the Malt Miller full-time for coming up 3.5 years now, but before that I was doing sort of freelance work for the Malt Miller for a few years. So kind of if I dial back to when I started homebrewing, which was in sort of 2016, I was looking around for local suppliers. I live in Swindon and very quickly stumbled across this place called the Malt Miller, put an order in for, I think it was for some sanitizing chemicals, Chemsan, something like that. Drove over here to collect it and was welcomed by this really lovely guy called Rob, who's the owner. He brought me inside, showed me round, and I was like, wow, this place is a sweet shop for everybody that's into homebrewing.
Haven.
And yeah, absolutely. And it sort of evolved from there, really. I was making some videos on my own YouTube channel at the time, which were horrendous quality, but it was a really big thing around that time, around sort of 2017, 2018. Lots of people making video content for home brewing out there on YouTube, the whole brew tube kind of phenomenon that went on. And we were posting beers to each other, like trying each other's beers. And I kind of said to Rob, look, hey, can I come and do an interview with you for my YouTube channel? So I did. It's still on there now. We sat down around the table. I asked him a load of questions, edited it all together. And that was a learning curve in itself because I wasn't really kind of proficient in anything to do with video editing and photography. I was literally just using my phone and, stitching it all together in, I think, iMovie at that time. And anyway, put that video out on my channel. But while I was here, filmed a couple of videos for their sort of fledgling YouTube channel. I say our fledgling YouTube channel, which sort of focused on like our ingredients and how we look after ingredients, how we store ingredients. And then I kind of got a phone call a couple of weeks later from Rob after that all went out. And he said, look, do you want to kind of do more of this for us on like a freelance basis? So I did, and that sort of grew and grew and grew. Then we got hit with lockdown, and that kind of had to change the format. So they were filming stuff here, sending it to me. I was editing it. We were doing like a weekly update because, throughout that whole lockdown period, homebrewing went nuts, and we really wanted to keep our customers informed about what was going on. And then kind of fast forward a couple of years later after that, I dropped a day a week at my other job at the time. So I went down to 4 days, and then I was doing Malt Miller stuff around about 16 to 20 hours a week freelance. And then very quickly after I was doing that for about 6 months, they offered me a full-time position to come here.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the reason behind that was that, the business had grown to a point where the team had grown, and, the premises had grown as well. We'd taken on 2 more warehouses, and my background was retail. I was a retail manager for 20 odd years, nearly, I think, before that. And sort of in the last 10 years of my career, I was working in sort of big box retail with big teams. I was looking after a lot of HR stuff, and they wanted somebody to come in and do sort of some operational stuff, help them improve HR standards, help them improve operational standards. So actually a proportion of my job is focused on that. Another proportion is obviously focused on the content we do here at the Malt Miller, and then the other sort of section is all of our marketing, so all of our social media, all of our emails, but also some of our kind of e-commerce based marketing practices as well that I look after. So yeah, bit of a busy boy.
Yeah, definitely. I'm guessing obviously sales improved during lockdown where people couldn't go out. So thought, oh, let's take my hand at home brewing and get a bit of kit.
Yeah, it was a big time for that. People were taking up new hobbies. The pubs were shut. It kind of, there was a little bit of a shortage for a period in beer as well, in small pack, because, cans were in massive demand for breweries. So loads of people took up home brewing during that time. It was crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So what got you into home brewing to begin with,
I can trace my my love for homebrewing back to one man, and he's a really good friend of mine, a guy called James, that I used to work with in my other job, and he has some friends that live out in the States. He would regularly go out there, and he'd come back, and he'd always take an empty suitcase, and he'd bring that suitcase back full of beer, and I remember he came to my house for a barbecue. My wife and kids were away, and he came over one day for a barbecue. I picked him up from the train station in Swindon, and he was walking down the platform of the train station with a suitcase that he was wheeling behind him. He had like a white sort of almost kind of Del Monte style hat on, and he was blowing a whistle as he was walking down the platform. Anyway, got back to my house. He opened the suitcase up, and he was like, "I brought some beer for us to try while we're barbecuing." And it was full of things like Sculpin, Bell's Two Hearted. There was a load of other bits and pieces that I hadn't really heard of, but there was also some Russian River stuff in there. And I remember sitting there all day, grilling, drinking some of these beers and being like, wow, this stuff is amazing. And that was in sort of spring 2016. And I've been sort of toying with the prospect of homebrewing for a little bit before that. Anyway, after he left, I literally spent the rest of that weekend devouring YouTube content on how to homebrew, because I was like, I can't buy these beers in the UK, so I need to learn how to make them myself. That's where it all started, really.
Moving on to, what sort of kits you have. You got, everything from like starter kits to, more professional style gear. How do you guide people through the range and what's best for them?
I think it's very much about, first and foremost, what does that person want to achieve, because that can help really shape where you want your brewing gear to kind of set up. And then obviously budget is a factor as well. One thing we advocate, though, is always, if you're going to buy any equipment, whether you're looking at buying something more budget friendly or something a little bit more expensive, that you always focus with a little bit of longevity in mind, and you don't buy things that you're going to have to replace. Always buy things that are going to be useful further down the line. So, if you're getting started and you just want to spend a little bit of money to get going with all grain brewing, buying a setup like a brew in the bag setup that's got a heating element in a bucket or in a stainless steel kettle, that can go on to help you if you then upgrade to an all-in-one system. It can become your hot liquor tank, for doing sparging. But equally, the same could be said for things just as simple as a mash paddle. You can buy plastic mash paddles. We sell them. We sell a lot of them. But investing in a stainless steel mash paddle, it's going to last you a lifetime. So I think the first thing we always try and focus on is, what do you want to achieve? Secondly, then recommending equipment that is going to really be lasting for you, that you're not going to have to replace.
Yeah, obviously how much you're going to brew as well. If you're going to do it once a month or 2 times a month, then obviously investing in, like you said, a steel mash paddle is going to be more beneficial than a plastic one, which probably might have a tendency to snap, especially if you've got a really fixed mash.
I've been there in brew day, going in and then snap. It's like, right, okay, what am I going to do now? Quick, raid the kitchen.
Yeah, and dig out the broken part of the plastic mash paddle from inside the mash.
Yeah.
So, what would you, for someone who's just recently just getting started with home brewing, what setup would you recommend to them?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to address this in 2 ways. First of all, if you're a bit more budget conscious, always think about brewing the bag as your first step. We do a simple, one of our plastic fermenter buckets. It's food safe, fitted with a 2.4 kilowatt element. So it's more than powerful enough to heat up your strike water and then go onto the boil. And a decent grain bag, and just start doing brew in the bag, because you can learn a load doing brew in the bag. And actually, we've tried and made some absolutely stunning beers using that method. I think there's a sometimes a misconception that spending more money on equipment means you're going to make better beer. Spending more money on equipment will help you with certain processes. That's absolutely without a doubt. But making really good beer really comes down to you and your skills and your practice and repeating the process, and learning in the hobby. I think, though, if you've got a little bit more money to spend, then and you want something that's going to work straight out of the box, that you could go and buy in the morning, get home, get it out of the box, and actually end up with some wort in a fermenter at the end of the day, you can't go wrong with some of the all-in-one brewing systems. And actually, for real simplicity, the Grainfather all-in-one brewing systems are absolutely fantastic for that, because they guide you through everything. They've got a really good app integration. There's loads of recipes on the apps. In fact, we've got a lot of our recipes available on the app as well. So you could buy one of our recipe kits and very quickly be cracking on with brewing that kit using a Grainfather. It's what I use at home. It's what we use here on our brew school, because it allows you to do other things whilst you're making beer as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, are you seeing any trends in what kinds of equipment people are buying at the moment?
Yeah, there are some trends. All-in-one systems are popular, and there's obviously been I say obviously, maybe not that obvious, but there's been a big expansion in the all-in-one brewing systems over the last few years. We've got all-in-one brewing systems from Kegland, like the Brewzilla, which are fantastic and a great price point. Obviously, the Grainfather systems that I just mentioned a minute ago. But within the Grainfather range, there's now different size brewing systems as well. So you've got the classic, the G30, but then the 40 and the 70 as well. So you can do bigger batches. And then for those that want like the footprint of an all-in-one system, but loads and loads of customization options, you've got the Brewtools systems made by Brewtools over in Norway, and those are they're commercial grade almost in a very small footprint. And we know that not only home brewers are using them, but commercial breweries are using them for pilot kits, and even some smaller commercial breweries that are just getting going are using their bigger systems as their main brew kit. So that's probably the trend within the all-in-one space. I think more widely, though, within home brewing over the last 18 months to 2 years, we're seeing a big uptake with people wanting to get into pressure fermentation because of the benefits that you can gain from it. I think the thing that really excites people about pressure fermentation is, the boom in brewing New England style hazy pales and hazy IPAs. You can brew in a far lower oxygen content environment, almost excluding all oxygen. But also, lagers, being able to turn lagers around really, really quickly, because you can, increase the temperature during your fermentation. So that's a big trend. The other trend that we're seeing is people wanting to get into home brewing, but on a smaller scale. So, kitchen sort of stovetop size, 5-10 litre batches. There's been a obviously Pinter are probably the most famous company out there at the moment that advocate small batch brewing with their Pinter brewing system, but also their fresh packs that they sell. And what we're seeing is people that want to do all grain brewing on a small scale, but use a Pinter vessel to ferment and serve that beer from. And, actually, we've been surprised just at how many people are doing that. We put a video out last year on our YouTube channel about this topic, and honestly, it's one of our best performing videos in the last 12 months. And it kind of took us by surprise a little bit as to how popular it's been.
So when it comes to, trying to design your own recipe styles, where would you suggest people begin? I mean, we've got Brewfather, you've got the Grainfather app. Where would you suggest?
Okay, so, we're seeing a bit of a trend in our customer shopping habits. When the Malt Miller first started, we didn't really have recipe kits, and we did start rolling out recipe kits, and that's grown and grown and grown. But it's always been kind of people buying their own ingredients and making their own recipes. What we're seeing now is much more people wanting to buy a recipe kit and brew that kit, and it's a little bit kind of like the Hello Fresh mentality. You get a box with everything in, you follow the steps, you end up with a great product at the end. Yeah. So I think that, if you're new to homebrewing and you want to learn the processes, but not necessarily learn recipe design at this point, starting with recipe kits. We do a couple of different sort of tiers within our recipe kits, starting with maybe one of our brew day in a box kits, which is literally a box that comes with all the ingredients, instructions, finings, finings, yeast nutrient, like everything you need in one box. They're a great place to start. Equally, we've got more advanced recipe kits like the ones that we have collaborated with commercial breweries on. Maybe once you've got a couple of brews under your belt, look at some of those. I think if you're wanting to build your own recipes, though, and you're new to home brewing, the best place to start is with smash recipes. So single malt, single hop. You're going to learn about ingredients because you can try some different ingredients isolated within that recipe. You're going to get to experience the flavors and the nuance of those ingredients in that particular recipe. And then you can start thinking about layering in bits and pieces as well that can complement it. And I think that any home brewer that's new to the hobby, doing a series of smash beers to try out different malts and different hops and different yeasts is a awesome learning experience because it really does highlight those ingredients that you're changing each time.
Do you find that people are leaning more towards that recreating commercial beers, or are they getting more experimental? I think, is it 5 Points is quite a popular recipe on your site?
Yeah, so we've got a whole section now that's dedicated to commercial brewery recipes, in part because we get to work with people like Andy Parker over at Elusive when his recent book was released via camera that was co-authored by Jamil Zainasheff, and we were really fortunate as part of our support for that. We got all of the recipes available as recipe kits on our website, but then we've also got the commercial collaborations that we do for our YouTube channel, our Brew With Us series, where we go and visit a commercial brewery and we unpick a recipe, but also look at the processes and techniques that brewery used to bring about the distinctive nature of whichever beer it is that we've got the recipe for. We are seeing as part of that kind of recipe kit growth that I was talking about a minute ago, more and more people wanting to brew things that are direct clones of a commercial beer. And I think, interestingly, because let's take the project we did last year with St Austell. Martin and I, my colleague Martin, we went down there and spent best part of a week with them. Got under the skin of Tribute, filmed a video series that was a few parts long, and this is a really good example because there's lots of clone recipes of Tribute out there. And you could read that recipe on a forum or on a homebrew suppliers product page, and you could go, I'm going to brew that recipe. You get it, and it's got the ingredients, and you crack on and you follow the steps. For us, though, the distinction is because we went there and we learned about their processes. We then had to come up with ways to interpret those processes into a homebrew perspective. So they do a two-step whirlpool, and actually Thornbridge as well, who we've recently done a collab with for Jaipur, do a similar process. So they do a whirlpool with a certain amount of hops, and then it gets moved into another vessel where it gets a big hop aroma infusion. And you could read that on a recipe sheet, right? Well, I've got those hops are all whirlpool hops, so add them all in together. But because the brewery separates it and something different happens, we then have to think about how we differentiate the two, and you end up with distinctive notes in the finished glass. So some of the commercial brewery recipes out there that we've been fortunate enough to learn from, understanding the processes and translating them, we feel helps to progress the hobby and give homebrewers more in their tool belt to play around with when it comes to brewing their own recipes.
So you stock in a lot of ingredients from around the world, hops, malts, yeasts. Which ones are the most popular, would you say, right now?
And it changes seasonally, right? So I'm going to take a little bit of a wide view on it. I'm going to start with hops. So New Zealand hops, certainly because of some of the work we've been doing with some of the commercial breweries. We've spent time with Verdant last year, big advocates of New Zealand hops, Motueka, Nelson. We're seeing those increase in popularity and being used more in not only juicy, hazy beer styles, but also in like West Coast styles and New Zealand Pilsners. So I think that category of New Zealand hops is probably a really popular area right now. You're never going to, you're always going to find things like Citra and Mosaic. They're always going to be up there. But yeah, we're seeing some of those New Zealand varieties have a bit of a heyday right now. Malt-wise, I think there's been a big uplift in people wanting to brew lagers over the last few years, and I think that some of the traditional floor malted Pilsner malts like the Weirmann, Bohemian Pilsner, those are really popular as well. We've seen them grow over the last little while. And then I think Maris Otter, right? It's always been popular, and it's always will be.
It's the base malt for like most beers, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, and you've got the low colour versions of it as well, which can be used singly or with other bits and pieces. You can use them in a traditional English beer style, or you can use them in a hazy beer style or a West Coast, but they just bring that lovely sort of distinctive Maris Otter note to a beer.
Yeah,
I think the one area that's been really exciting in the last few years, though, within yeast, is the boom in dried yeast varieties. I don't know if you remember, but Martin, probably only like 4 or 5 years ago, it was distinctly a smaller category of available yeast strains versus liquid yeasts, right?
Yeah, you had like Stiffo, the standard ones, and then I think the one I used, which was probably the best, was the Verdant IPA dry yeast strain. But since then, obviously, it's boomed from there. Lot more dry yeast coming out. That
Verdant yeast strain's a really good example. It was the first kind of like hazy, sort of London Ale 3 kind of yeast strain that dropped in a dry format. Whereas today, we've probably got, I've lost count basically of how many dried yeast strains there are that do that job. So it's really exciting and innovative.
It's it stores longer, and it's just easier to use, isn't it? You just literally just drop it in, and there's no with liquid yeast, it's a lot different, isn't it? There's a lot more process to using it.
Yeah, I think if you still want those really distinct yeast strains, liquid is the only way to go. But if you want a stock in your fridge of some backup yeasts, or if you want to have a relatively easy brew day, it's a great option. And so many commercial breweries are using it. Well, we just mentioned Verdant. It's their yeast strain. It's what they use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you've built up a massive reputation as a really good retailer for home brewers. You can talk a bit more about the tools and the content that you offer people to help them improve as a home brewer.
Probably at the core of what we do and why we do what we do is that homebrewing's a community. You all know that, right? You're a home brewer. There's an amazing homebrew community in and around London.
London Amateur Brewers.
Yeah. Beer boards, all of these clubs, but more widely across the country, it is a community. We're home brewers. That's what brought us into this. So we feel like we have a distinct purpose, which is to advance the homebrewing hobby and help people make better beer at home and be part of that community. Not just servicing that community, not just selling ingredients and equipment, but actually helping homebrewers enjoy and get the most out of it. This year, actually, we were looking at some sort of data at the beginning of the year, and we were seeing that actually we were getting quite a lot of new customers shop with us, which indicates that maybe more people are coming into the hobby. So we actually took the decision to set up a series that's running pretty much all year long called Homebrewing 101, which dives into key topics that are either popular or helpful for new homebrewers. And that's been really popular.
Yeah, you mentioned about homebrewing is getting a bit more popular now, probably down to people can't really afford to go out and drink as much as they used to, so they're thinking, let's give it a go ourselves. What excites you most about where homebrewing is heading at the moment in the UK? It sounds like it's expanding a lot more.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because you say that obviously people haven't got maybe as much money as they did have previously, so they're maybe not going to the pub as much, taking up hobbies. There's also a swathe of younger people that aren't drinking as much as well, you know. But I think in terms of like where things are heading, there's advancements in the sort of technology available to home brewers all the time at the moment. You know, we've got two companies I think that really stand out that are providing innovations within our sector. One is Kegland. You know, the guys from Kegland. They're amazing. They're very quick at bringing things to market, and always seem to have like actually fixing a problem kind of in mind.
Yeah.
You know, their products are accessible for many people. I think the other company is Brew Tools over in Norway. Like I said earlier, they make super premium stuff that is brewery quality equipment, sometimes like more so than kind of what you'd see in a commercial brewery. But they, again, really quick to kind of think about accessories that people are asking for and getting them to market. They've just launched this FCS kit, fluid control system, that works with their uni tanks, but also can be deployed on commercial uni tanks. And it monitors and tracks fermentation, turns on heating elements, tracks density in the beer. You know, it completely automates your fermentation. And, you know, for home brewers that are keen on it, like, that's an amazing thing to set up. But equally for commercial breweries, that could take a lot of the human kind of interaction on your tanks and free up resource for other jobs. So I think technology-wise, those are probably the things that stand out for me. I think that within the homebrewing community, the stuff that really is exciting that's happening in the UK is the growth in the competitions, right? You enter into a competition, you get really good feedback now, you know, structured feedback, quite often in the BJCP kind of format, so that it can give you really good things to take away and actually work on and improve. So they're a competition and you might win some stuff, but more so you're going to get loads of great feedback that will help you grow in the hobby. I've probably got one last thing as well on the kind of the trajectory, the things that are happening here in the UK, and it is a product line, you know, not to go sort of too salesy, but it's a product line that we're bringing in at the moment, and it's fresh work kits. So have you heard of fresh work kits before?
No, I mean, obviously extract kits. So I'm guessing it's something similar to that, is it?
Yeah, so extract kits, right? So wort has been made for you, then it's been concentrated down into either a powder or a liquid form. You dilute it down, right?
So is this where the wort is in liquid form and you kind of put it in a plastic bag, like a bag in box would be, and then having it delivered? Yeah,
so it's exactly that. So you get 15 litres of wort that's been made by a commercial brewery. It's had bittering additions, it's had whirlpool additions. All you have to do is pour it into a fermenter, you know, dilute it. You might, because they're brewed to a slightly higher gravity, so you just need to dilute it with a bit of decent tap water or, you know, some bottled water, and then add the yeast, ferment it, add your dry hops, and you've got all grain quality beer, but you've not had all grain time go into it. It's perfect for like this time of the year where it's really hot, but also for people that have maybe done a couple of extract kits that want to experience all grain, but don't necessarily want to invest straight away in all the equipment. It's a great way to experience the quality of all grain beer.
Quick question on the, you know, adding, you know, water, tap water, for instance. Obviously, a lot of breweries change their water profile or build their water profile from scratch. If you're adding, say, for instance, tap water from somewhere that's got hard water or soft water, wouldn't that change the flavour or the recipe a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always say that, you know, if you're not into water chemistry and not into making water adjustments, buy bottled water. You know, it's got low mineral content. That's going to make a big difference to the finished beer.
Yeah. What's your favourite beer style to brew at home?
That's dead easy. Hazy Pale Ale. I love brewing them. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love all beer styles and I'll regularly brew different styles. I've got a West Coast Pale in the fermenter at home. I've just about to have a keg kick of a single decocted Czech lager. You know, but I always go back to brewing a hazy pale ale, partly because it's something that both I and my wife absolutely love to drink. But I love playing around with those. It's one of the reasons why I got into home brewing and really pushed myself forward with it. So it's got a special place in my heart.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely always brew hazy beers indoors. Nipa was the last one I did. So one mistake that you think every home brewer makes at least once. I mean, I think it's something to do with cleanliness, because I've definitely made a mistake once or twice with not cleaning something, and then the whole beer just goes.
Oh yeah, getting into the nooks and crannies of your fermenter, making sure that you take your tap apart, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the one mistake that I talk to most people and they all say, yeah, I've done that, is leaving the tap open on their fermenter when they're filling it from after you've made your wort. And so you're transferring it over, you're getting on with other things, and you look around and there's just a puddle appearing, and it, depending on how long you've been distracted for, denotes the size of that puddle and how much of your time you've wasted. I think that's one thing that everybody makes. Then the next one, and I do want to get this one in because I've made this mistake a few times. When you start out home brewing, you might get a few brews under your belt. You might be feeling like you're building your confidence, and then you go, right, I'm going to have a go at brewing a hazy pale or a hazy IPA. And that beer style has the potential to put you right back in your place. Yeah. You get any kind of oxygen contact with that during past fermentation, when you're packaging or kegging or whatever it might be, and you just end up with this soul-destroying grey soup. And it's happened to me on a number of times, and every time, even now, I've had it happen to me recently, and it's like, oh man, really? And it just has this way of, like I say, putting you back in your place and saying to you, you've still got stuff to learn.
If you had to brew a beer, I know you said you love your hazy beers. You only had 3 hops. Which ones would you use, and what parts of the process would you add them?
Okay, so you're being quite generous by saying 3 hops.
I know, I was thinking about 1 hop, but I was like, that's more like a smash recipe then. Let's give you a bit more experimentation.
Right, I'll tell you what, if I was picking 3 hops, it's dead easy. Citra, Mosaic, Motueka. That combination, those 3 together, works brilliantly. And I would, for this dream recipe, it's like off menu, right? For this dream recipe, it's a hazy pale, and I'm not adding any hops into the boil. I'm literally nothing in there at all. I'm adding equal amounts, probably 50 grams each, into the whirlpool for a 23-litre batch. And then on the dry hop, I'll add 100 grams of each into dry hop post-fermentation. Dead easy.
Nothing in the bittering, no bittering hops whatsoever.
No,
just in the whirlpool. So you're going to get your bittering hops, your IBUs more from the whirlpool, which is probably about 10, if that, 10 IBUs. Yeah. Sounds good. A lot of Citra Mosaic, because you can't go wrong with Citra Mosaic, can you?
No, you can't. No, but adding the Motueka in there just throws in this little curveball of lime, which is just delicious. And
you would do equal amounts of each. That's interesting. Yeah. There we go. It's going to be up on. Is it up on the Malt Miller website? The kit, is it going to be up there?
My House Hazy Pale Ale is up there as a recipe kit that people can check out. It's not as simple as what we've just been through there, but it's very close to it.
Yeah, check it out, people. I'll get the link description afterwards, and we'll put it up for everyone to have a look at. And this is the Dream Hazy Ale from James. There we are. So, where can people get started with homebrewing through the Malt Miller? You've got your website, you've got your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So obviously, the easy answer is our YouTube channel and our website, but actually being a little bit more precise with that. If you're starting out homebrewing and you want to get into all grain homebrewing, check out our kitchen brewer range of recipe kits that are all like stovetop 5-litre batches, because you'll already have the majority of the equipment needed in your kitchen and won't need much else to get going with those. We've also got a video sort of companion that goes along with that, that's step by step, that we filmed actually in my kitchen. So if you want to see inside my house, you can watch that. And I think that if you've got a passion for getting into all grain brewing, but you just want to dip your toe and have something drinkable at the end, checking out those kitchen brewer recipe kits is a great place to start.
Yeah, great. So we're wrapping up now. Any future projects coming in that no one knows about yet? Is any
Yes, we've got.
You heard it here first.
Here first, yeah.
Here first.
We've always got things in the pipeline happening. We've just announced that we're doing the Love and Beer Festival again with Johnny and Brad from the Craft Beer Channel. This time it's going to be Beer Merchants on Friday the 17th of October. So that's out there. Grab your tickets, come along, have some beers, try some homebrew. It'd be great fun. We've just done a project, a collab with Daya to bring one of their recipes to the homebrew world. Video
Steady
went
Rolling
out.
Man, is it?
No, it's not, sorry. But it is Dust My Broom, which is a massive focus on Simcoe, and I absolutely love that beer. That video went out last week. Part 2's coming in a couple of weeks' time. We've got some more of those like collab Brew With Us projects lined up for later down the line in the year. We're talking to Sure Shot at the moment to do one with them. Nice. We're looking at going back to Siren, who were the first brewery we did a collab with, and do something to kind of celebrate that. It'll be around about 3 years since we started that project with them. In terms of like products, there's some stuff that's on its way to us at the moment from Kegland, because we order our stuff from Kegland from China. We've got their new range of stainless steel kegerators coming in, and they're absolutely fantastic. And there's one of them that I really love. It's called the Undercover Kegerator, and it's designed to be an under-counter fridge. So not a fridge, like some of the kegerators where you've got the beer font coming out of the top. It slides under your under your existing worktop. It's designed so the taps go through your worktop, so you have like a permanent fixture. So really, really cool for like small tap room setups, but also if you want a really nice integrated homebrew setup within your kitchen, not a kegerator in your garage or in a utility room, you want it integrated in your kitchen. It's a really smart option. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what those are like.
An excuse to get a new kitchen because you want an under-counter kegerator.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. On that note, James, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you and learning about the Malt Miller and everything. And so until the next couple of weeks, we'll be chatting to Sean from Bridge Cross Brewery. It's our next episode. Again, thanks, James, for coming on the show. And we'll catch you again in a couple of weeks. Cheers.
Nice one having me. Cheers.
You're welcome. Cheers. Bye-bye.